Hello, Experiment Club. Back at you with another week of fun stuff to be doing, hopefully at home and with things readily available to you. For the next 2 weeks, we're going to be looking at seeds. And so on Saturday, before you're getting this on Monday, on Saturday, went out in the mail some seeds to you guys so that you have seeds at your house, because I know that not all of you just have seeds laying around. Some of you probably do, but not all of you. So we are going to be doing some experiments with seeds. So I will send out instructions on that here shortly with your email, and after you watch this video, you can look back at the email for those instructions. But I wanted to talk to you a little bit about seeds before you get started on your experiment. So seeds are actually living things, but they're what we call dormant. So they're not actively growing, but they're still alive. Seeds need three things to grow. They need warmth, they need water, and they need air. Those are the only three things that a seed needs to get started, okay? A lot of us think that a seed might need soil or sunlight, but with the experiment that we do, you're going to find that they actually do not need soil and sunlight to get started. All they need is warmth, water, and air. So a really neat story about seeds. Most of you have probably heard of King Tut, Tutankhamun, who was a pharaoh in Egypt who lived about 3,000 years ago. So back in the early 1900s, a man by the name of, I think it was William Carver, found King Tut's tomb, and it hadn't been discovered since he had died. And so when pharaohs died, they would pack a bunch of stuff in their pyramids with them or in their tombs with them because they believed they were taking it to the afterlife. And so one of the things they found in the tomb was a jar of bean seeds. And so scientists couldn't wait to take these back to the labs to test to see if these bean seeds would still germinate or start growing. And guess what? They did. These bean seeds started growing 3,000 years later. So they were dormant. And then with warmth, water, and air, they started growing after 3,000 years. Isn't that remarkable? All right, so on the seeds, we're going to talk about the anatomy of the seed before you get started. And when you do your experiment, you're going to be able to witness these parts of the seed up close and personal. But every seed has a coat on it called a testa, okay? So the seed coat is called the testa. And then once the seed starts to germinate, that testa falls off, and then there are four important parts inside of the seed. So the first thing is called a cotyledon, and a cotyledon is kind of like a power pack for a seed. It holds all the nutrients and stuff that the seed needs to start growing. Remember when I said that the seed just needs water, warmth, and air? It doesn't need soil or light. So normally plants get their nutrients and their water from the soil, but if the seed has moisture, that cotyledon supplies all of the nutrients that the seed needs to grow for 1 to 2 weeks. It depends on the seed. Things like maybe a green bean seed or a bean seed, they have big cotyledons. So they have a big power pack, and they can grow actually for quite a long time without any added nutrients. The second part of the seed to know is called the radicle. And so that's inside the seed. And when that water opens, when the testa comes off and it starts to open, the radicle will start to go down. And the radicle is the root, but then it has hairs on it. And those hairs, we call them hairs, are the things that extract the water and the nutrients from the soil or from the surrounding area. The third part is the hypocotyl, which is the stem, okay? So that's the stem that goes up. And the reason it goes up is for some reason, whether it's adapted or was created that way, it knows to look for light, because we know from our chlorophyll lab that plants need sunlight to create glucose to feed the plant, and one of the things that it needs is that sunlight. So the hypocotyl knows to grow towards the sun, and that's a word we call phototropic, which means that things grow towards the sun, and you'll get to see that in your experiment as well. And the last thing that's inside that seed is called the plumule, and that is the first two leaves that the seed needs to start growing. Without leaves, it can't process that sun, water, glucose to create that photosynthesis. It doesn't have those three things that it needs. So cotyledon is the power pack. I actually have a seed here. So this is actually from a wisteria plant. I have two really big wisteria vines. If you've ever seen a plant that grows and it's a vine and it has flowers that kind of hang down and look like grapes, that's what a wisteria is. It's beautiful. It's one of my favorites. I actually love it a lot because it grows all over Claude Monet's estate in Giverny, France, and it's just one of the things that I love. All right, but you can see here, this is what the seed looked like to start with. The testa came off, and the cotyledons are actually inside this part. Now this is the radicle, which is the root, and can you see the hairs on it? Okay, so those are the root hairs. And then here we have the hippocotyle, which is the stem. That's the initial stem. And then these are the actual, they're grown a little bit, but these are the first leaves that come out of the seed that are called the plumules. So these have grown a little bit because this is probably a couple days past where I needed to pull it, but that's what I could find in my yard this morning. One of the things about wisteria plants is they distribute seeds in a unique way. They develop these pods and they explode, and when they explode, they disperse their seeds that way. So all plants disperse their seeds different ways, and wisteria seeds actually, or pods, explode and it sends the seeds all over the place. I actually can sit in my house sometimes and listen to them flying all over the place. It's really kind of funny. But anyways, because they fly all over the place and they explode, we find these all over my property. So I could just go outside and pick a couple. I actually have 3 or 4 here. But I'll try to include some wisteria seeds for you too, because it's actually a beautiful plant. Go ahead and Google it with parents' permission and see how it grows. It's very beautiful and it's very hardy, so it will grow really well, and it doesn't mind the heat and stuff. So obviously when it gets started, keep it in the shade. But so to review the parts, this is the seed. The testa, or the seed coat, comes off. This is the cotyledon. We'll probably peel this off so you could see it a little bit better. And that's where the nutrients for the first 2 to 3 weeks come from. Sorry, 1 to 2 weeks. And this is the radicle, which is the root, and you can see the hairs on there. The hippocotyle is the stem, and then the plumule, which is the first leaves. And that word plumule, it may sound kind of like plume. If you've taken any Spanish or foreign language, that sounds like pen. Well, pens back in the day were feathers, and so plumule is the word feather in Latin, and it's because the first little leaves that come out oftentimes will look like feathers. So the Romans were very literal in the way that they used vocabulary, and so it looked like a feather. They called it a feather. All right. Well, like I said, look in the email for your instructions for your experiment, and I will post a part 2 with a wrap-up of the experiment and send that out in a few days. Hope you guys are well. Miss you. Bye-bye.